When others fled, humans stayed. The evacuation that never came. The evacuation sirens screamed across Station Gamma 7 like wounded animals crying into the void. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the cargo hauler Prometheus, watching dozens of ships flee from the dying station. Behind her, the massive space station groaned and twisted, its hull buckling under the pressure of the black hole slowly pulling it apart. "Captain, we need to leave now," her co-pilot Marcus shouted over the alarms. His hands shook on the controls, ready to punch the engines the moment she gave the word. Sarah's eyes were locked on her scanner. Among the chaos of escaping ships and tumbling debris, she saw something that made her blood run cold. 7 small dots on the screen. 7 evacuation pods that hadn't launched. 7 pods still attached to the education wing of the station. "Marcus, scan those pods. Tell me I'm wrong." His fingers danced across the console. When the results came back, his face went pale. "Life signs. 32 of them. Captain, they're children. The school field trip gone wrong. 6 hours earlier, everything had been normal. Station Gamma 7 was a peaceful trading post and research facility orbiting a stable star system. The station hosted scientists from 12 different alien species, all working together to study the nearby nebula. It was the perfect place for a school field trip. 32 young students from the Valorian species had arrived that morning with 2 teachers. The Valorians looked like tall, graceful beings with silver skin and large eyes that could see more colors than humans. They were peaceful, kind, and completely unprepared for what happened next. A rogue black hole, invisible until it was too late, had suddenly appeared at the edge of the system. It was small but powerful, and it was hungry. The station's scientists detected it only when it started pulling the station toward it like a leaf caught in a river current. The evacuation order came fast. Too fast. In the panic and confusion, the children's pods had malfunctioned. The teachers had been separated trying to help other students board emergency shuttles. Now those 32 children sat trapped in pods that wouldn't launch, while every adult who could have saved them was already fleeing. Every adult except Sarah Chen. One human against the void. "We can't dock with the station," Marcus said, his voice tight with fear. "The gravitational stress is tearing it apart. Any ship that gets close will be crushed or pulled into the black hole with it." Sarah was already strapping into her environmental suit. "Then I'll spacewalk." "That's suicide. The debris field alone will." "I know." Sarah's voice was calm as she checked her suit seals. "But I'm not leaving children to die when I can do something about it." Marcus stared at her like she'd lost her mind. Maybe she had. Every logical calculation said this was impossible. The radiation from the black hole was increasing. The station's structure was collapsing. The debris spinning through space would shred her suit in seconds. She had maybe 15 minutes before the station crossed the event horizon and nothing could save anyone. 15 minutes to do the impossible. "Marcus, I need you to hold position here. When I signal, you bring the Prometheus as close as you dare. We'll load the pods through the cargo bay. If you don't come back, tell my daughter I tried." Sarah sealed her helmet and moved to the airlock. "And Marcus? If I do make it back, you're buying the first round." Walking through hell. The moment Sarah left the airlock, she knew she'd entered hell. Debris screamed past her at impossible speeds. A piece of station hull the size of a car missed her by inches, spinning so fast it was just a blur. The black hole loomed ahead, a terrible darkness that bent the starlight around it into a ring of fire. Every instinct Sarah had screamed at her to turn back, to flee, to save herself. She activated her jetpack and flew toward the dying station instead. Her suit's radiation alarm was already beeping. The gravitational forces pulled at her body, making every movement feel like swimming through thick mud. Ahead, the education wing was coming apart like a building in an earthquake. Through the windows, she could see the tiny faces of Valorian children pressed against the glass. They'd seen her. They were pointing, their large eyes wide with hope and terror. Hold on, kids, Sarah whispered. Crazy human lady is coming. The first rescue. The evacuation pods were attached to the outside of the education wing. Each pod could hold 4 children. In normal circumstances, they would launch automatically during an evacuation. But these weren't normal circumstances. The station's computer system was failing, the mechanical releases were jammed, and time was running out. Sarah reached the first pod and looked through its tiny window. 4 small Valorian faces stared back at her. They were so young. Maybe 7 or 8 years old in human terms. One was crying. One was trying to comfort the others. All of them were terrified. It's okay, Sarah said, knowing they couldn't hear her through the vacuum but hoping they could read her lips. I've got you. She pulled out her emergency cutting torch and went to work on the pod's release mechanism. The metal was warped from the gravitational stress, fused together by heat and pressure. Sarah cut and pried and cursed, her hands working faster than she'd ever worked in her life. Behind her, a massive explosion rocked the station as another section tore free. The shockwave threw Sarah against the pod, nearly knocking her loose. She grabbed onto a handhold and kept working. 2 minutes later, the pod released with a hiss of escaping air. Sarah grabbed it and activated her suit radio. Marcus. 1 pod away. Coming to you. She pushed off from the station, dragging the pod with her. It was heavy, awkward, and fighting against the black hole's pull with every meter. Sarah's jetpack fuel gauge dropped rapidly as she burned thrust to keep them moving in the right direction. The Prometheus appeared ahead, its cargo bay doors open like welcoming arms. Sarah pushed the pod inside and immediately turned back. 7 more to go, she gasped into her radio. Sarah, your radiation exposure is critical, Marcus warned. Your suit says. I don't care what my suit says. Sarah was already flying back toward the station. Those kids are dying in there. Against all logic. What happened next would be studied by xenopsychologists for years as a perfect example of human irrationality and human heroism. By every measure, Sarah should have died. The radiation should have cooked her. The debris should have torn her apart. The black hole should have pulled her in. The station should have collapsed completely before she finished. But Sarah Chin wasn't interested in what should happen. She was interested in saving children. Pod by pod, she cut them free. Each trip took longer as her strength faded and the station disintegrated further. The metal grew hot under her gloves as tidal forces stretched and compressed the structure. Pieces of the station fell away constantly, tumbling toward the black hole's hungry mouth. On her 4th trip, her jetpack sputtered and died. Fuel exhausted. Sarah didn't even pause. She grabbed the pod and used handholds on the station debris to pull herself and the children toward the Prometheus. Hand over hand, one grip at a time, moving through a storm of metal and fire. On her 6th trip, her suit's primary oxygen tank ruptured from radiation damage. Marcus talked her through switching to the emergency tank, his voice steady even though they both knew she had maybe 10 minutes of air left. 10 minutes to save 8 more children. You can't do it, Sarah, Marcus said quietly. The math doesn't work. Come back. Save yourself. You tried. Sarah looked through the window of the 6th pod. 4 more small faces. Behind them, through the station windows, she could see the last 2 pods. 8 more children. All of them watching her. All of them believing that this strange human would save them because that's what humans did, they made impossible things happen. Watch me, Sarah said, the impossible becomes real. No time for reason. Sarah's hands moved on autopilot, cutting through the pod's release mechanism while her mind focused on staying conscious. Her vision was starting to tunnel. The edges of her sight were going dark. Every breath burned her lungs as the recycled oxygen thinned. The 6th pod came free. Sarah pushed it toward the Prometheus with the last of her strength, riding with it this time, clinging to its exterior like a barnacle on a ship's hull. The cargo bay caught them and she immediately spun around. 2 pods left. 8 children. Maybe 5 minutes of air. Sarah, please, Marcus begged. You've saved 24 kids. That's incredible. But you'll die if you go back. Then I die. Sarah's voice was hoarse, strained. But not with the sound of children crying in my ears. Never that. She grabbed a spare oxygen tank from the emergency locker. Marcus had been smart enough to leave one in the cargo bay, and clamped it to her suit with shaking hands. Another 10 minutes of life. Just enough. Maybe. The station's final minutes. The 7th pod was partially buried under collapsed ceiling panels. The education wing had folded in on itself like a crushed can, and the pod was wedged tight. Sarah could see the children inside pounding on the windows, their mouths open in silent screams. She braced her feet against the station hull and pulled. Nothing. The metal had fused together, welded by heat and pressure. Her cutting torch was nearly empty. Her body was failing. Every muscle screamed in pain from the radiation poisoning and exhaustion. Sarah thought about her daughter back on Earth. 12 years old, brilliant, beautiful. She'd be so angry that her mom died like this. They'd argued before Sarah left on this cargo run. Something stupid about homework and screen time. Now that would be their last conversation. Unless Sarah did the impossible one more time. She activated her suit's emergency beacon, which sent out a powerful electromagnetic pulse. It was designed to help rescuers find lost astronauts. Sarah aimed it at the pod's release mechanism and fired. The pulse fried the electronics completely, but it also overloaded the magnetic locks holding the pod in place. The pod lurched free so suddenly that Sarah tumbled backward, spinning through space. She grabbed the pod as it drifted past and pulled it close like a mother protecting a child. 7 down, she gasped. Marcus, catch. She pushed the pod with all her remaining strength. It sailed toward the Prometheus on a perfect trajectory. Marcus caught it with the cargo bay's magnetic clamps and pulled it inside. Last one, Sarah. Come on. You can do this. The station lurched violently. The entire education wing was separating from the main structure, beginning its final fall into the black hole. Sarah could see the 8th pod through a window, still attached by its release clamps. In 30 seconds, that whole section of the station would be gone forever. The final choice. Sarah had no fuel. No strength. Her oxygen tank showed 3 minutes remaining. The 8th pod was 30 meters away across a gap that was widening every second as the station broke apart. She could make it back to the Prometheus. Save herself. Live to see her daughter again. Tell her she was sorry about their fight. Watch her grow up, graduate, maybe have grandchildren someday. Or she could try for 8 more children. And probably die. It wasn't even a choice. Sarah pushed off from a piece of debris, flying through space with nothing but her momentum and hope. She sailed across the gap, arms outstretched, aiming for the drifting section of station. If she missed, she'd float away into the black hole's embrace. If the timing was wrong by even a second, the station section would be too far gone. She caught a handhold. Her shoulder nearly dislocated from the impact, but she held on. The metal was so hot it burned through her glove. She didn't care. The 8th pod was right there. 4 small faces pressed against the window. They'd watched everything. They knew this human was dying to save them. They were crying. Not yet. Sarah mumbled. Don't cry yet. Her torch was empty. Her tools were gone. She had nothing but her hands and will. Sarah braced her feet and pulled on the pod's release lever with everything she had left. The lever didn't budge. It was designed to hold against thousands of pounds of force. No way a human could break it manually. No way a human should even be here. Should have run with everyone else. Should have chosen logic over compassion. Should have lived instead of making this last, stupid, heroic gesture. But humans didn't become humans by doing what they should do. Sarah remembered her daughter's birth. 12 years ago. Labor that lasted 18 hours. Pain beyond description. The doctors said she should have the surgery. Sarah refused. Kept pushing. Kept fighting. Did the impossible because her baby needed her. These children needed her now. Sarah pulled. The metal groaned. Her bones creaked. Blood vessels burst behind her eyes from the strain. The radiation was cooking her from the inside. Her air supply alarm was screaming. The universe itself seemed to be telling her to stop, to give up, to accept defeat. The release lever snapped. The pod came free. The longest journey. What happened next exists only in station security recordings and Marcus's tearful testimony. The section of station Sarah stood on broke completely free and began falling toward the black hole. Sarah grabbed the pod and pushed it away with her last burst of strength, sending it spinning toward the Prometheus. Then she pushed herself in the opposite direction. She had no oxygen left. No fuel. No hope of survival. But she'd given the pod enough momentum to reach the ship. That was enough. Marcus watched in horror as Sarah tumbled away into the black. He wanted to go after her, but he had a cargo bay full of children who needed to get to safety. He had to close the bay doors. Had to fire the engines. Had to run. Had to leave Sarah Chen floating alone in the dark. The Prometheus pulled away from the dying station just as it crossed the event horizon. The last thing Marcus saw was the education wing being stretched and torn by tidal forces, disappearing into impossible darkness. And Sarah Chen, arms spread wide like wings, face peaceful behind her cracked helmet, falling into the black hole that should have killed them all. When humans come together. The story should have ended there. 32 children saved by a human who sacrificed everything. A tale of heroism that would be told across the galaxy. But the story didn't end there. Because Marcus looked at his scanner and saw something impossible. A tiny signal. Weak. Fading. But there. Sarah's emergency beacon. She was still alive. Somehow. Beyond all logic and physics and reason. All ships, all ships. Marcus broadcast on emergency channels. Human in distress. I need help. Anyone. Everyone. And they came. Every ship that had evacuated from the station heard the call. Ships from a dozen species, from traders to research vessels to military scouts. They all heard the same thing. A human was dying after saving children that none of them had been brave enough to save themselves. A Valorian research ship, the same species as the children Sarah saved, diverted back toward the black hole's influence. Dangerous. Stupid. Exactly what a human would do. A Korvax military vessel, whose people had been at war with humans only 5 years ago, turned around. We're coming, Prometheus. For the human. For Sarah. A Talnor medical ship, equipped with radiation treatment facilities, pushed their engines beyond safe limits. We have her. We see her on our scans. Hold on, human. We're coming. 13 ships from 9 different species flew back toward the black hole. They formed a chain, each ship anchoring the next, creating a lifeline that stretched across the impossible space. The last ship in the chain, a small Valorian scout vessel, extended its cargo claw into the black hole's influence. They grabbed Sarah Chen 30 seconds before she would have crossed the event horizon and been lost forever. What humans taught the galaxy. 3 weeks later, Sarah woke up in a hospital ship orbiting Earth. Her daughter sat beside her bed, holding her hand, crying. Mom, you're an idiot, the girl sobbed. You almost died. For people you didn't even know. Sarah smiled weakly. Not people. Kids. Big difference. The Valorian ambassador wants to meet you. So do like 50 other species. They're calling you a hero. I'm not a hero, Sarah said. I just did what needed to be done. That's exactly what makes you a hero, you impossible human. The voice came from the doorway. A tall Valorian woman stood there, silver skin gleaming, large eyes bright with tears. Behind her stood 32 young Valorians, all healthy, all alive. "I am Teacher Velmora," the woman said. "These are my students. The ones you saved. We wanted to thank you. And to ask you a question that our entire species is asking." "What question?" "Why did you come back? Every other species fled. You could have saved yourself. Why did humans choose differently?" Sarah looked at the children. At her daughter. At all the beings gathered to hear her answer. "Because," she said simply, "what's the point of surviving if we lose what makes us human? We could have run. We could have been safe. But we would have lived knowing we left children to die. That's not survival. That's just existing." She struggled to sit up. Her daughter helped her. "Humans don't just exist. We live. And living means caring about more than just ourselves. It means doing the impossible when the impossible needs to be done. It means looking at the darkness and saying not today. It means choosing hope over logic, compassion over calculation, and love over fear." The Valorian children rushed forward then, surrounding Sarah's bed, all trying to hug her at once. They were crying and laughing and speaking in their musical language. Teacher Velmora translated, tears streaming down her face. "They say you are their hero. They say humans are crazy but wonderful. They say when they grow up, they want to be brave like you." Sarah laughed through her own tears. "Tell them to be braver. Tell them to be better. Humans aren't special. We're just stubborn. We refuse to accept that some things can't be done." The legacy of the impossible. The story of Sarah Chen and Station Gamma 7 spread across the galaxy like wildfire. It became required reading in schools of every species. Military academies studied her decisions. Philosophers debated the logic, or illogic, of her choice. But mostly, it changed how the galaxy saw humans. Before, humans were seen as young, reckless, occasionally dangerous. After, they were seen as something else. Something special. Not because of their weapons or technology or physical strength. Because when everyone else ran, humans stayed. Because when logic said impossible, humans said watch me. Because when children needed saving, humans didn't calculate the odds. They just acted. The Valorian species declared Sarah Chen an honorary member of their culture. The Korvax, who had been at war with humans, opened peace talks, citing Sarah's rescue as proof that humans were worthy allies. 6 other species established new diplomatic relations with humanity. All because one woman refused to leave children behind. Marcus eventually told Sarah what happened while she was unconscious. How 13 ships from 9 species came back for her. How beings who had every reason to flee instead chose to risk their lives for a human who'd risked everything for their children. "You didn't just save those kids," Marcus said. "You saved something bigger. You proved that compassion isn't a weakness. That doing the impossible is possible. That humans aren't crazy, we're just brave enough to care." Sarah smiled. "We're definitely a little crazy, Marcus. Don't sell that short." "Yeah," he laughed. "We're that too." Epilogue, the station that stands forever. 5 years later, a new Station Gamma was built in the same system. It was designed by a combined effort of 30 species, incorporating the best of everyone's technology and knowledge. At its center stood a memorial hall. The hall contained 32 statues of Valorian children. Between them stood one human in an environmental suit, arms spread wide, face determined. Below the statue, a plaque read, "Captain Sarah Chen, Human, Earth." Who showed the galaxy that impossible is just another word for not yet. Who proved that the greatest strength isn't the ability to destroy, but the courage to save. Who chose to live as humans do, with hope, with compassion, and with stubborn determination that the universe can be better than it is. When others fled, humans stayed. When logic said no, humans said yes. When darkness threatened to win, humans brought light. This is humanity. This is why they are our friends, our allies, and our inspiration. On the memorial's dedication day, Sarah stood before the statues with her daughter beside her. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy had come to attend. The 32 children she'd saved, now teenagers, stood nearby. One of them, a young Valorian named Silvera, approached Sarah and spoke in perfect English. "Miss Sarah, we wanted to tell you something. All of us decided. When we finish school, we're all going to be rescue workers. Because of you. Because you showed us what matters most." Sarah hugged the young Valorian tight. "That's the best news I've heard all year." Later, as the celebration continued, Sarah's daughter asked, "Mom, do you ever regret it? Going back? Almost dying?" Sarah looked at the young Valorians laughing together. At the beings from different worlds celebrating together. At the monument that would stand for generations, reminding everyone that compassion and courage could change the galaxy. "Not even for a second," Sarah said. "Those 15 minutes, the worst 15 minutes of my life, they mattered more than all the safe choices I could have made." That's what humans understand. It's not about the years you live. It's about the moments that make living worthwhile. "You're going to do something crazy again someday, aren't you?" Sarah grinned. "Probably. But next time, I'm bringing better equipment." They laughed together under the stars, surrounded by the family she'd saved and the galaxy she'd inspired. Because that's what humans do. They look at impossible situations and impossible odds and impossible choices, and they make them possible through sheer determination and stubborn hope. They don't do it because it's logical. They do it because some things are more important than logic. They do it because children need saving, because compassion matters, because love is stronger than fear. They do it because impossible is just another word for not yet. And they'll keep doing it, one impossible act at a time, until the whole galaxy learns that the real magic isn't technology or power, it's the courage to care when caring seems crazy. That's humanity. That's their gift to the stars. That's why when everyone else runs, humans stay.